name is Max. Let's read the book together. My name is Max. Let's go to the library together.
What book are we going to read today?
Hark, Ruby Lead.
Ah, Hark, it's me, Ruby Lee. Sit down. Now, this book is a notable book for this year's Children's Book of the Year Awards, isn't it? We're reading all these notable books as part of our book week series, aren't we?
Why you didn't take a photo of him?
We are going to take a photo with him right now. It's Me, Ruby Lee, by Lisa Shanahan and Binny, and published by Lothian Children's Books. Ruby Lee loves pockets, peaches, puddles and polka dots. She loves humming and hopping and handstands at dusk. She loves tadpoles, gumboots and grand adventures, and George Papadopoulos, her best friend in the whole wide world, and helping. Ruby Lee loves helping. That's nice. She's holding the umbrella, isn't it? I think that's George there.
I think that's not George. I think that's another guy.
Okay, ready? On Monday mornings, Mrs. Majestic Jones chooses special people to do special jobs in her class. So far, Ruby Lee has been in charge of the clock, the calendar, and the lunchbox basket. She has been a table helper, a line leader, and a whiteboard cleaner. She's been very busy, hasn't she? Been very helping in class. But she has never ever been a messenger, even though she is the best in her class at announcing, "Hark, it's me, Ruby Lee," she says. "Fear not, I am the bearer of good news." She likes screaming, doesn't she?
No, that's not Hark. That's Hark.
Oh. Says George Papadopoulos. "I am wondering." "Yes," says Ruby Lee, "whether Mrs. Majestic Jones prefers messengers who are not so good at humming or hopping or handstands." "Oh," says Ruby Lee, "so you mean like all the quiet and still as a statue people, like Sienna and Vienna." Sienna, Vienna?
Eddie!
They must be...
Eddie!
Ah, yeah.
Eddie's family have Vienna.
Exactly, says George Papadopoulos. "Perhaps it would help if I was very quiet and still." "Maybe," says George Papadopoulos. "You could always give it a try." "Yippee," says Ruby Lee, hopping about on one leg. But the next Monday, when Mrs. Majestic Jones chooses special people to do special jobs, Sienna is chosen to be the messenger once again. At recess, George Papadopoulos shares his speech. "Never mind, Ruby Lee," he says. "There's nothing wrong with being the little patrol officer. There's nothing wrong with being the litter patrol officer, except for when you have to be one all the time," says Ruby Lee. But see how the birds all love you? Only because I saved them the best scraps." "Maybe next Monday," suggests George Papadopoulos, "you could try being very quiet and very still." She's helping the birds. Wonder if she gets chosen next week. The very next day, Sienna and Vienna are both away, which means, says Mr. Majestic Jones, we will need to choose a different messenger. Forests of arms rise. Ruby Lee sits quiet and still as a statue. Oh, she didn't put her hand up. That doesn't help. Ruby Lee asked Mrs. Majestic Jones, "Would you like to be the messenger?" "Yes." She leaps up. "Hark, it's me, Ruby Lee," she says. "Fear not, I am the bearer of good news." "Thank you," says Mrs. Majestic Jones. "Now go to the office with George Papadopoulos and ask if we may have the hall for singing at lunch. And don't waddle." I wonder what happened. "Now, George Papadopoulos," says Ruby Lee, "only the most intrepid of messengers will make it across the desert, past the spockled Frockle-Wockle." "Oh, Ruby Lee," groans George Papadopoulos. "Hark," says Ruby Lee, "fear not." Back. "Muddled," says Mrs. Majestic Jones. "What do you mean you've muddled the message?" Was it before or after lunch? Asks Ruby Lee. Oh, for goodness sake, take this note. Sounds like I got the message wrong. Now, George Papadopoulos, says Ruby Lee, only the most valiant of messengers will make it over the mountain past the Squinker. Oh, Ruby Lee, groans George Papadopoulos. Hark, says Ruby Lee, fear not. So I think she's having the adventure getting to deliver the message rather than focusing on the message. Gone, says Mrs. Majestic Jones. What do you mean the note is gone? Perhaps it slipped out of my pocket, says Ruby Lee. Oh, for goodness sakes. This time, let George carry it. She seems to be making mistakes with the messages. Now, George Papadopoulos, says Ruby Lee, only the most ingenious of messengers will make it through the jungle past the Shruggle. Oh, Ruby Lee, groans George Papadopoulos. Hark, says Ruby Lee, fear not. Lost, says Mrs. Majestic Jones. What do you mean you've lost, George Papadopoulos? Perhaps it was the Shruggle. The what? Oh, sit down, Ruby Lee, says Mrs. Majestic Jones. Adelaide Kiev will be the messenger for the rest of the day. Oh, that doesn't sound good for Ruby Lee, does it? At lunch, George Papadopoulos says, cheer up, Ruby Lee. I'm sorry, says Ruby Lee. I didn't even know you were stuck on the monkey bars. I'm just a good-for-nothing nobody. Oh, Ruby Lee, says George Papadopoulos, you are the very best somebody I know. That's very nice, isn't it? Then one afternoon, a pigeon flies into the classroom. Sienna squeals and squeals. Wah! Yuck! Ew! Aye! They're all scared. And Vienna darts and dashes, flapping and flipping, while the pigeon swoops and loops, and even poops. Oh, I've done a poop on the desk. The whole class shrieks and dives. No! Mrs. Majestic Jones cowers behind her desk. Help! Cries George Papadopoulos. Doesn't look like Ruby Lee's worried at all, does it? Everyone else is all hiding under the desk. They're all scared of the pigeon, aren't they?
But why no one's catching it?
Well, because it's flying around real fast. Ruby Lee leaps up. Hark! It's me, Ruby Lee. And she says, fear not. And taking a spare crust from her pocket, Ruby Lee holds it out. She stands quiet and still as a statue until the pigeon alights upon her arm, and she carries it gently out the door. Hey?
Where's the poop?
I don't know where the poop is. You like the poop picker? Huh? But she was friends with all the birds because she used to feed them scraps when she was litter patrol, didn't she? So the birds like her. Monday mornings, Mrs. Majestic Jones chooses special people to do special jobs. Every week, Ruby Lee is the special emergency officer every single day.
Everybody have a fun book week. See you next time. Hi kids, reading is very important. Reading helps us get smart. We can become smart adults. You can make the world better. Adults, you can't do this by yourself, you know. Don't know all the words. You need your help to read books. Read the child book today. We can do it! Please come back and play with me. Please subscribe and press the red button.